Hello everyone and welcome to the next point that we will explain here, which is about the do while loop. So as we know, we have already taken and studied the while loop, which is a looping statement that actually provides the evaluation of that. Like the evaluations comes in the first place, and then we execute our code. So the do while loop here is actually doing the kind of a way opposite. So if you go back, let me just show you an example of the while loop. So this is the let me just show that back. Yes. So when you see here, so this is just a simple example. So for the while loop, you will be having the evaluation in the first place, which means the condition here has to be for true in order for the code to be executed. So this code will be highly controlled by the by the evaluation here. Okay, so that's why. So this means that actually we need to evaluate first and then we execute the code. So when you talk about the do while loop here, we have a little bit of difference here in the formatting. So we execute our body of the loop here, the body of the loop, and then at the end we evaluate whether we have a correct condition or not, so that we can continue. We decide to continue or not. So that's why we call this kind of looping as a post test. While the normal while loop, it is called as a um, pre-test. So this is a post-test, while the like the previous while loop, it is a pre-test. So because we are testing before we execute. Okay, so this actually has been also reflected in the flowchart, as you can see here. So if you go to the flowchart of the while loop, you will find this statement, whatever statement in the loop, they are actually come here. They are being placed here after the condition. But because this is a do while, the statements are being evaluated and executed before the condition, and then the condition is taking a place. If the condition is true, then more loops will be prompted so that this statement will be re-executed again and again. And then if the condition is actually came to be false, then then the loop will be simply finishing or like ending up. Okay, so there are some notes that you need to notice in this kind of style of looping. In this style of looping, the first note, and this is the most important note actually, is that this loop, whatever it takes, or like whatever the condition that comes here, it will be executed only, like at least for one time. Okay, and then the condition, of course, should be true, so that more loops will be executed. Otherwise, it will be actually terminates. And also it requires like to have these brackets, the open and close brackets. So these are the two brackets here. We need to have them even if we have only one statement. Okay, unlike the while loop, if you remember, if we have in the while loop at the beginning, if we have only one statement here, if we have only one statement, assume that we don't have that line, number equal to number plus one. Assume that we only have that one statement. So we can have an option to write that statement without these two brackets. But talking about the while loop, the do while loop here, it is actually we need to include these brackets as a necessary input, or like as a necessary typing. And then we have that semicolon. This is very important, and I think like most of us is actually coincidentally forgetting this, because you see this is the only condition that we have a semicolon after it. If you see, if you notice, the if condition doesn't has the while loop. Also the normal while loop, not the do while loop. The normal while loop doesn't has this after the condition. It is like only this is the only condition that has a semicolon after it. Okay, so um, so these are the notes that that you need to notice. Let me just give you just a simple example of implementing the do while loop here, so that like we can make sure that things are being clarified. So just as simple as int, we are defining an integer number, or like distance. Let's say let's just make it more practical. Distance equal to um, uh, what? Let's say that distance is equal to 5, for example. Okay, so while distance while distance is less than 3, then oh, that's actually This is actually the normal while. Okay, let me just do start with the do while. So the do while will be like the do comes in the first and then see out, because I'm actually just printing out. So see out. Okay. What should be in the see out? Distance is distance. Okay. That would be as simple as that. And line. And then I'll be having while this is the condition comes here, distance. Of course, that should be, let's just assume that distance is greater than 10. So is this function, I mean, like, is this evaluation correct here, as you can see? Sure, it's not correct. Why? It's because, like, the value of 5, I mean the value of distance, which is 5, it is not actually greater than 10. So if anybody has had a look to that code from the first, I mean, like, from the first while, I mean, like, from the first view, he will definitely say that, oh yeah, this kind of loop will not be executed at all. Why? It's because the condition is wrong. It's already false from the beginning, as you can see here. So 5 is actually greater. 5 is not greater than 10. I mean, like, distance, value of distance here is not greater than 10. So there will be 0 loops. But let me tell you that this kind of loop will be executed only once. So this kind of loop, this condition will execute the loop for one time only. Why? It is because the execution, or like the body of the code, it has come in the first place before we evaluate, if you can see here. So the compiler will actually go one by one here. So we do, and then we explain, I mean, like, we display whatever code here, whether any equation. In this case, we are actually displaying. So we are displaying, and then we evaluate. So is distance greater than 10? No, then there will be no loops anymore. So that will be after the first one, after the first display, there will be no more displays. Okay, so this is what we mean by, if you reach back to, I mean, like, the slides here, you can see that here. This is the, I mean, like, this is what I mean by the loops are always executed at least once. Okay. All right. So in order to make this as a loop, to make it as like a normal loop, of course we have to have, this is the counter. So, and the counter has to be initialized. Counter. So we call this as a counter. You need to remember this. You need to remember this point. So whatever variable or whatever value comes here in this place is the leftmost side of the evaluation. We call this a value as the counter, or that variable as a counter. So this is a counter variable. So I think that should be more clear. I mean, while this one is the controller. So 10 here, let me just add it in a variable so that you can, I mean, like, I can term it well. Int y, for example, equal to 10. So 10 here, this is the controller. What do I mean by a controller? A controller meaning that it is the value that will indicate how many loops. Indicate how many loops that we can go for the execution. You see? So as long as this distance or this value is less than that counter, so we can indicate. So okay, so I need to I would like to notice this kind of notification. It depends actually on the initialized value of the distance. So if the distance has been initialized to 0, yes, we can clarify that this is actually the actual number of loops. It depends, of course, on the sign and whether we initialize it to 0 or 1. These are very important points. But there are some cases, and they are actually not so common, whereby the counter is not being initialized as 0. For example, we initialize it as 4, and we are free to do so, and this is very correct. There is no problem with that. Okay, in this case, this will not indicate the number of loops, but what will indicate the number of loops is that the difference between these two. So I need you to understand this in your mind, that in any case, try to put the difference always in your mind. So the difference between 0 and 10, that will be almost 10. I mean, like 10, I mean, like there are 10 units, right? So 10 here will be the number of loops. But according to the according to the difference. But if we say that distance is 5, we are initializing distance from 5. So how many loops do we have here? Of course, we should have 10 minus 5. That will have 5 loops. I hope that that could be very clear to you. So here we are talking about the difference. So I need you to, I need you to focus on this. Okay. So let's just come back to the default. This is actually the most common practice, that we should initialize a value either to 1 or 0, depends. Okay. Because sometimes whether we can put equalization here or not, that depends on that value. Okay. So if we put equalization here, you need to make sure that you need to notice that 10 here is included. So which means that here, in this case, we have 11 rounds, you see? It's because we have included 0, and then we are including 10 by the equalization. So since we are actually meant to have 10 rounds, so this is the round. So what else here? So we have a variable, a counter variable, and we have a controller. And in order for the loop to function, we need to have a counter. Sorry, we need to increase that count. Increase that counter. So a counter, it's not a new variable name. Again, I'm saying a counter, this is the counter. And the counter, this is the one. And this is the, the leftmost side of the evaluation. It is usually named as the counter. So counter, how to increase it? Simply plus plus. So this is it. Okay. So distance plus plus. So this is the counter. And I need you to remember this. So we do not increase counters by having a plus plus distance. This is actually wrong. It is actually wrong. It doesn't reflect that we are actually increasing the, we have a correct increment of the distance. Okay, so I need you to write it as distance plus plus. So meaning that we first return the value of distance, which is 0, and then we write distance equal to distance plus 1. So as a translation of this. Okay, so let's just run that, and you can see the results here. Oh, distance is 0. It's because our evaluation is 0, of course. You see, is distance greater than 10? Yeah, it's not actually. So this is wrong. So this has to be actually flipped to the way opposite. Distance should be less than 0, because as long as this is true, the loop will continue on and on and on again. So let's just start that, and here you go. So now the distance is starting from 0 to 9. 10 is not included because we don't have equalization here. You need to remember that. And we are starting from 0 because we are initializing it to 0. You can initialize to 1 to start from 1 to 9 or to 10. Okay, so this is a very simple example of while loop. And actually you can take this example to increase the the number of coding, the logic inside the while loop. And you need to know that as while loop is similar to any kind of looping. You can include cin to read the user input. You can include if to have a condition. You can include also else switch statement, even else if else if, of course if has to be with the else if. And actually you can consider it as a very any block in the code. So it is not only limited to display and increasing, but increasing the counter has to be always at the end. So we always put this at the last line before we end our loop. Okay, so this is actually the practical side of the do while loop. So for the menu driven, there are actually the most important usage of the do while is that they are actually being used for menu driving. Whenever you want to run a normal loop, so most likely most programmers, they are using the while loop, not the do while loop. But do while loop here, it is most likely used for menu driving. Menu driving meaning that asking the user to enter values or enter a specific choice, and then according to that choice, you can just process the code or do some logic. Let's just take this in practice, because I believe that this kind of theory will not bring the idea up to alive. Let me just consider this a question. That question. Okay. Let me just consider this question as a do while loop, and that will be the our last practice here. So write a program to display we need to write a program to display the addition of any two integers that are entered by the user. So meaning that we have, of course, so let's just let me just delete this, not delete comment, because I do not want it to affect my code. Okay, that's it. So int here, that will be int x and y. These are the two integers as the question asks. So you just notice how am I translating that question. That will be even like a practice for you later on, that you can learn how to analyze the question. As I said to you before, analysis is half of the solution of the code. All right, so what about 3? 3, I don't need to put it in a code, I mean like in a variable. I will just use it as a constant value. Later on, we'll see that. But for now, we will just define two variables. Do we need to assign them a values? No, it's because they are entered by the user. That should be the user, not users. Okay, so now I do not need to write the cin here. I need to include the cin within the loop. Why? It's because the logic is asking me to allow the user to enter different values for 3 attempts. So it means that I should have some kind of loop in order to allow me to do something. I mean, allow me to execute something. So within the loop here, I can write my own. I mean, like I can see out. I can write the usual cout cin, the user prompting. So here I can ask the user enter values for x and y. Let's say also you have 3 attempts to make it more informative. You have 3 attempts. Okay. Let me just indent that to have a clearer display. I don't need to add actually the end line, so because we have cn that will have x, y. Okay, what else? So I need to display only and display their additions. So I don't need actually to store the addition in another fourth value. I can write like int z equal to x plus y, but all right, like for now, actually, it's not necessary for us to focus on this because this is like a very simple formula. So we can just simply include it in the cout. So this is what I will do. So I will just write it in the cout, the addition of. I have forgotten the double quotation here because see that's why the code here or the text has been undefined. The additions of x and y is, and then I can add another item here that will be the x plus y. Okay, so let me just indent this again in line. Okay, I have left with something here. I have missing something here. What do you think it is? You can guess with me. What is it? Yeah, it should be the counter. I don't have any counter in here. If I have, this is the while loop or this is the while statement, I don't have any counter. So where is the counter to be to be put? It has also to be initialized, by the way. So I will do something. I mean, like I will do two things in order to integrate or like in order to put or to use a counter here. I need to define the counter int count. Okay, any name you can just give. It's not like a specific name, and I should initialize it with. Let me just initialize it with 1 because I want to reflect the actual values. Okay, and then here at the end I need to increase the counter because without increasing the counter the loop will not actually be going on. Okay, so I should write count plus plus. That should be the counter increment. So here again, as you remember, counter used to be in the leftmost side. So count should be whether greater than, should be less than actually, because we are initializing and we want to make it increasing. So less than or equal 3 here. Why did I put equal here? It's because I have started from 1 and I want to reach 3 and I want to include 3 in that time. So you can initialize it from 0 and remove that equalization to run for 3 loops. That should be, I think, clear. And don't forget again the semicolon here. Okay, so with that, this is a ready code. So now you can just see the results here. enter x and y, you have 3 attempts. So let's say that 3 and plus 4 will be 7. That's fine. So there's another shot here. So 5 and 6, that will be 11. There is another shot, which is the final shot. I will add 6 and 2 will give me 8. And then you see here the program has already closed. So this means that we are actually running, like a prompting user for several times to, to read values. So you can extend actually this code. Maybe, for example, you have given, let's say I'm asking you, can you display the average of, for example, 3 courses? Ask the user to enter 3 courses and then display the average of them for 3 different inputs from the user. Yeah, and meaning that the user have a choice to enter 3 times. To calculate the average for 3 times. Maybe he have a first try, second try, third try. So that could be like an extension for that code. Okay. So this is the do while, an implementation of the do while menu driven. This is actually the final point within our session today. I hope you really understood and you get the benefit out of that. And if you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask about it and let me know, whether like on Moodle or like send me by email. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next point. Thank you.